Hello everybody, my name is Roy Nemmer of Mundo Albiceleste.com and welcome to another video. And this time around, we are going to talk about the Argentina under-20 team's elimination at the Sudamericano, what impact this has on the team in the near future or even right now in the present, and in general, kind of a little bit of what went wrong. So we're going to discuss a little bit about all of that. And the Argentina under-20 team are eliminated, and as I mentioned in the previous video, this Sudamericano tournament served as the qualifier for the Under-20 World Cup and the Pan American Games, both of which will be taking place this year. And as a result of their first round elimination, Argentina will not be at both of these tournaments. And looking at the results, it wasn't a great turnout for Argentina. A loss against Paraguay, a loss against Brazil, a win against Peru, and a loss against Colombia. And I see a lot of people talking about Javier Mascherano, the coach, and I'm going to do a separate video about Mascherano. I'm not going to talk about him too much in this one just because his future hasn't yet been decided. Mascherano himself said he doesn't think he will continue on as coach of the under-20 team. There was a meeting between himself and Claudio Tapia, the president of the AFA, but no outcome, nothing has been confirmed so far. Now, as for this tournament, what this means, because I mentioned that the team will not be at the Under-20 World Cup, but an immediate kind of reaction is it's doom and gloom, it's not good, it's not this, it's not that. And I get it to a certain degree, it's human nature, right? We're going to think about the worst. But there were a lot of positives, or a couple of positives at least, at this tournament, right? We saw the development of Infantino, Nico Paz, Aguirre, for example. And it wasn't all bad. It really wasn't all bad, at least from looking at it from a player perspective, right? Obviously, very much disappointed they won't be there, and they will not be at the Under-20 World Cup. Now, them not being at the Under-20 World Cup, what this means is, yes, we are going to miss out on the chance of seeing this team, plus Alejandro Garnacho, plus Matias Sule, plus Luca Romero, and plus a few others as well that were not released for their clubs for this Sudamericano tournament. So we're not going to get to see that. And the players, what this means for them about not being at the Under-20 World Cup is potentially less scouts, right? Because there are a lot of scouts at these youth tournaments, specifically this one, right? So they're not going to be, exposed to these scouts. And as a result, it could potentially lower their chances of going to Europe right away or in the soon or even immediate future. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean that, well, that's it. They're not at the Under-20 World Cup. They're not going to go to Europe. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying, right? But you're going to see, and I want you all to follow me along on this because it's a sort of a domino effect. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. So them not being at the Under-20 World Cup means less scouts for them, right? Less eyes on them from a European club, whether that's a giant club or a smaller club, doesn't matter. And them having less eyes means they won't really get to play in Europe, or their chances, of playing in Europe in the near future might be reduced a little bit. And that means for them less exposure to European football. So I'm not even necessarily just talking about not playing Champions League football or Europa League football or Conference League football, but just in general playing in Europe, right? Making that jump sooner rather than later. Right? And them making the jump later doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Not at all. That's not what I'm getting at. But you're going to see what I mean. So them not playing in Europe, less exposure, less games in Europe, right? All of that stuff. And what that means is because they're not making the jump over to Europe just yet, the clubs get less money, right? Transfer money. And if the clubs get less transfer money, then they have less money to invest in their players, invest in the development of their players and the league in general. So the federation ultimately gets less money too. So it's a sort of a domino effect. And I know I might be a little bit extreme and people might think, Roy, okay, you're overdoing it here. And maybe I am, right? But this is also the one of the aspects of making sure that not only does the team qualify for the Under-20 World Cup, because there's a lot of reasons why we want Argentina to qualify for the Under-20 World Cup, but from a financial aspect, from a youth development aspect, it helps. It's no surprise that Argentina in the late 90s, early 2000s dominated under 20 football. They really did, right? All of the World Cups won, and all of the major players making the jump over to Europe, from Riquelme to Cambiaso to Aymar to Saviola. And right now, yes, Argentina have players. Garnacho's playing in Europe, Romero's playing in Europe, Nico Paz with this team right now is playing in Europe. But if we look at previous World Cup editions, under 20 World Cup editions where Argentina were there, whether they won it or not, we're at the under 20 tournament. You look at the players that ended up making the jump over to Europe that year or shortly after. Angel Di Maria, for example, under 20 World Cup in 2007, made the jump over to Benfica. Ezequiel Garay, another one who was there in 2005 with Argentina, made the jump over to Spain to play with Racing. Pablo Zabaleta, 2005, made the jump over to Espanyol. Lucas Biglia, who was there in 2005, made the jump in 2006 to Anderlecht, right? Just a couple of months later, about a year later. You have maybe some lesser known players. Gabriel Paletta made the switch over to Liverpool in 2006 or late 2005. Pablo Piatti made the jump over to Almeria. So this tournament does serve as a sort of launching pad to get these players exposed, getting them to play against the top players in their age group, get them exposed to the scouts, and get them over to Europe. Right now, we've seen Argentina in the past, in recent memory, maybe not qualify or not do too well at the Under 20 World Cup. If you missed it, I did a history of the Argentina Under 20 team. It's on YouTube. I'll put the link in the description. Make sure to watch it if you haven't already. It's I go into some good detail, if I do say so myself. So, those players, the ones that I just mentioned a couple of moments ago, they're a prime example, right? And they are talented. And Argentina have talented players in this group. Infantino, I mentioned, Nico Paz, Aguirre, Maestro Puig, for example, isn't bad either. I mentioned Mascherano at the start of this video, and a lot of people want to talk about him. And there are certain things that, yes, absolutely, and I'm saying this as someone that loves Mascherano. Does he deserve the blame? For most of it, if not all, I understand. And Mascherano even blames himself. And honestly, I tend to agree. And, I love him, right? I'm a big fan of his. It didn't help him that there were individual mistakes, and these things happen at every age group, including and especially in the youth, right? But it doesn't help him that the players made individual mistakes in key moments of the tournament. Okay, for example, Gomez Gert, the goalkeeper, the opening goal against Paraguay, made a blunder. It went in. It happens. Di Lolo in that same match gave away a penalty. It happens. Herrera, who ended up becoming the #1 goalkeeper later on in that tournament, made a mistake in the last match against Colombia. A match where Argentina, were playing better than Colombia, but were not really, they didn't score. Okay, so I'm not blaming a single player. I don't blame a single player, by the way. I really don't, especially not for their elimination. This is not on them. I personally fully blame Mascherano. And like I said, I'm going to do a separate video about that later on once his decision is confirmed. Whether he stays or not, I'll do a video. So I'm not blaming a single player at all by any means, right? It's just that, those individual mistakes didn't help him. And these things happen. These things happen at every tournament for every team. So as a coach, you have to be prepared for this. Like, what happens if my team gives up a fluke goal, something happens, whatever it may be. And I think Mascherano played a little bit too much with the team. It certainly didn't help him that the way the schedule was set up, Argentina, not only Argentina, but every team was playing every 48 hours and sometimes even less. So Argentina played on Saturday, then they played again on Monday, then they played on Wednesday, then they played on Friday. So Mascherano rotated, and he rotated a lot, right? We didn't get a single same 11 in any of the 4 matches that Argentina played in this tournament. And, you could rotate a little bit, you change 1 or 2 players. Mascherano essentially was just doing mass changes. And that maybe shows his lack of experience, his inexperience. We got different styles of play throughout this tournament. One match varied to another. So, a lot of factors. And unfortunately, it's a lot of factors that maybe were influenced by Mascherano's lack of experience. And this is why, even though I mentioned earlier individual mistakes, these happen. You cannot blame the players, and I'm not blaming them by any stretch of the imagination. I think Mascherano does deserve 100% of the blame for this elimination. And, I'm trying not to be too harsh on him because, like I said, I do love the guy, and he's still very early in his coaching career. So, these things happen. But all this to say that, yes, there are, there is some sort of effect on the players. And at the same time, the players, for example, someone like Nico Paz, got the support of Rodrigo de Paul or Leandro Paredes on social media after Argentina's elimination, right? So we might end up seeing someone like a Paz or Infantino, or maybe even a Garnacho or a Sule or a Romero in the senior Argentina team, right? Just because this team didn't qualify for the Under-20 World Cup doesn't mean that these players are not good or these players will never make the national team. Not at all. A lot of them might even make their debut this year for Argentina, right? It's just that it would obviously do more good or a lot of good to have this team in Indonesia playing at the Under-20 World Cup or taking part in the Pan American Games. But a lot went wrong at the Under-20 Sudamericano. It is what it is. These things happen. And as I said, I'm going to do a separate video regarding Mascherano as soon as the decision is out, whether he stays or whether he goes. If you like what you saw, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification button to be the first person notified as soon as a new video drops. Once more, my name is Roy Nemmer of Mundo Albiceleste.com, and thank you for watching.